In a campaign speech in Atlanta on Sunday, Senator Ossoff turned the corruption focus on his Republican opponent, Mike Collins.
Now, remember, Mike's already under federal investigation for illegally funneling tax dollars to his violent staffer's girlfriend for a no-show job. Do you remember that? But Mike Collins also repeatedly broke the law hiding his crypto trading. Because he's like a scandal piñata. But every time you shake him, more misdeeds fall out.
The Office of Congressional Conduct referred Mike Collins to the House Ethics Committee regarding his use of congressional resources, which he has called a, quote, nothing burger. Mike Collins has denied doing anything illegal with his crypto trades. In that same speech in Atlanta on Sunday, Senator Ossoff, to the outrage of the Trump White House, said this.
They've lied nonstop about this war like they lie about everything. And they know they're lying, but they lie and they keep lying anyway because in this White House, they view persistence in deceit as a virtue. You hear me, Atlanta? And there's something uniquely despicable about lying a nation into war. Treating citizens as fools and those who serve as pawns. Aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, they've now been at sea for 240 plus days without a port call. It's a Navy record. And still they serve with excellence. And still they serve with excellence. God bless the sailors, Marines, aviators, and all aboard the United States ship Abraham Lincoln. See, they don't expect luxury. They'll endure hardship. But they deserve competent leaders who send them into combat only when necessary. And with decisive clarity of purpose, not fools who lie about the purpose and progress of war. And while the sailors on the Lincoln fight his war, while he fruitlessly drains our munitions and oil reserves, the president sleeps through his meetings. He golfs and trades stocks. See, he doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar.
Joining us now is Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia in his campaign for re-election. Senator, of all the things you've said about Donald Trump, and there are many, this is the one that apparently bothers him and everyone at his White House the most. You said, we just heard it, he wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar. Why do you think that's the line that bothers Donald Trump the most?
Lawrence, it's been amazing to watch this White House melt down over this all week. And about Natalie Harp, these White House staffers are adults, public officials paid by the taxpayer with immense power in positions of public trust. And whether it's Natalie Harp printing out Donald Trump's daily dose of delusion and flattery, or Peter Navarro steering taxpayer-funded loans to Trump family investments, or Pete Hegseth deluding the president daily into deepening this quagmire in the Middle East, no one cares about their feelings. The sailors on the Lincoln are fighting his war, a war based on lies, while he plays with his new ballroom, flies around on a jet given to him by a foreign prince, and retreats into this circle of sycophantic aides who tell him every day what he wants to hear, not what he needs to hear. This entire White House is responsible for lying the country into war, and for the rest of their careers, they will be known for having participated in this obscenity.
As I listen to you make this case in these speeches, especially in the full context of the entire speech, there's a flow and a logic to this. But there are people out there who believe that you are deliberately trying to carve out these little bites that will specifically provoke Donald Trump. Is that what you're doing, or are you just trying to communicate to those voters what this is all about?
I'm trying to make sure that folks in Georgia know the truth about this administration. And apparently, in the White House, the truth hurts. They've lied us into war after promising peace. They've driven inflation skyrocketing, thrown people off their health insurance, doubled health insurance premiums for more than 1 million Georgians after they promised to bring down prices on day one. And the president's done so enabled not just by hangers-on and sycophants in the White House, but also Republicans in Congress who have enabled him at every turn. And one of them is Congressman Mike Collins here in Georgia, the pro-war, pro-tariff, pro-cutting your health care, bigot congressman, Trump puppet who's running for the U.S. Senate. And Lawrence, I want people to understand the following, because I've heard some rosy predictions about this Senate race in Georgia. This is Georgia. This is the most competitive battleground state in the country. The president's allies are right now, as we speak, committing tens of millions of dollars to attacking me. I guarantee that within weeks, the polling will be within the margin of error. And there is no path back to the Senate majority without winning this race in Georgia. So if you are fed up with what's happening to our country and the lies from this White House and the war and the inflation, and you want to take action right now, pick up your phone, pick up your laptop, go to electjon.com, and help empower me and my team to win this crucial Senate race in Georgia.
The president sleeps through his meetings. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar.
Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff name-checked Trump aide Natalie Harp in that campaign speech, which attacked Trump on several fronts. But what you heard there, that brief reference, clearly upset Trump the most. It set off tons of coverage in serious outlets, from the Times to the Journal, big headlines. Now, is this kind of a media frenzy in a summer lull? Or did President Trump break his own PR rules by clearly overreacting to an attack, which lets opponents define the topic for once? Or is there something odd and potentially substantively revealing here? Well, we do know some facts. Harp is a trusted aide with a somewhat vague portfolio. She has the access of top Trump advisors like Stephen Miller, and she is involved with Trump's online posts, really acting more as an amplifier than any kind of filter. And that could be part of her close tie to the president, because he certainly posts a lot online. But, of course, there are other aides who hold titles that are higher than that in that portfolio, like running digital and social media. So the Harp-Trump relationship has gotten more attention lately. You can see them interacting behind the scenes in this film.
How many people are watching?
Can we tell how many, Dan? How many people are watching?
She's talking about how great San Francisco was before she destroyed it. The things of which she complains. Things of which she complains.
That's sort of them kind of doing political work, and she's part of typing up what he wants to tweet or post. Another film from Fox presents one moment when he called her up on stage.
And somebody said she's here. Are you here, Natalie? Where's Natalie? Will you come up here, please?
It is rare to be called up on stage and get that kind of shout out when you are a staff member. Nowadays, we know Harp spends more time with Trump than basically any other aide, and she reports exclusively to the president and no one else. That's an unusual reporting structure, the Journal notes. She sits on key meetings, including in the National Security Situation Room. Now, some White House aides bristle at her access, and you could say that's just the normal kind of political competition. Others are downright mystified by the warmth of the professional relationship they have and how that has spilled into public view. Harp wrote to Trump in a letter, "You're all that matters to me," the Times reports. And Trump tells people about her affection and, quote, love for him. That Harp is the only one who loves him as much as his wife and children. He recounted, according to the Times. His other staff will go off and make money, Trump would say, but, quote, Ms. Harp will never leave him. In another one of those letters, she wrote, I want things to always be right between us. I also know I've been distracted all week, forgetting to eat throughout the days, even forgetting to sleep, and only catching a couple hours at a time, she explained to her boss, signing it with all my heart, Natalie. If Trump is taking any of the varied criticism he faces very personally these days, it appears to be on this topic.
Mr. President, yesterday Jon Ossoff said you'd rather travel with your aide, Natalie Harp, and build the ballroom than do your job as president. What is your response, Jon Ossoff?
You mean Pee Wee Herman? Pee Wee Herman lookalike?
Trump and his allies have seized on that nickname. That was not off the top of his brain. That's something they've tried to roll out to brand Ossoff with a kind of negative visual comparison to the controversial TV personality. Well, I'll tell you, we will skip any pics of Pee Wee Herman tonight, but here is one of the talking chairs from his show, if you want to think about where the president's mind is. But those attacks have only added fuel to this story and driven headlines, which is a dynamic that Trump knows. The U.S. is facing major problems while Trump's approval has crashed to an all-time low. And every other president usually makes a public point of focusing on domestic problems. The Harp saga does also fit a wider pattern where Trump puts his personal needs, ego, fixations, political revenge, and often questionable and corrupt profiteering above even a pretense of publicly governing this nation facing all these problems. And when you look at the few cabinet meetings Trump has held, which are, of course, a rare, vital time to coordinate every federal agency together and set the agenda and do governing, many have devolved into bizarre efforts at praising Trump rather than doing any work.
This is the greatest administration.
I want to thank you for your vision, for your courage.
Thank you for doing the work of the free world.
I don't know of any American president in the modern era that could have made this possible.
I'm grateful this holiday season for you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, it is my distinct honor to be a member of the cabinet.
The greatest cabinet ever for the greatest president ever.
This is stuff for the history books. This is stuff for legacy.
That happens at a bunch of different cabinet meetings, not just one, presumably because people figured out that's what Trump wants and they do that instead of working. That was across more than one. The last actual cabinet meeting was about 3 weeks ago. And Trump, we know, has been focusing on pricey construction, vanity projects, eluding himself. Even as judges have limited his power to unilaterally remodel the White House, which is a permanent public building, not his personal property, or rename the Kennedy Center after himself. New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman has been one of the few reporters on the Trump beat since back in the New York days before he was president. She's interviewed him many times. She has access, and she says quite seriously that she estimates those vanity projects now take up the bulk of his mental focus.
If you looked at like a chart of his mind share, like this I will say about getting into his mind, like 70% of it would be on his renovations.
What? So Washington's interest in this particular saga over this Trump aide does link out to this broader problem in governing, which the public is clearly aware of. This is what Trump's second term looks like. It is totally different from what he promised, and we see the vast power and fortune of public service being turned into the petty private profiteering of a apparently upset lame duck. We witness a leader who is undoubtedly powerful, rich, and famous, but who remains enraged that right now, as he clearly knows, he is so unpopular before a nation of Americans that know him quite well. And so he digs into insisting that he must still be loved. Trump observers noted that his tributes to Ms. Harp don't focus on her for her work or her talents on the job or her as a person. They focus on her view of him, the only one who loves him like a wife The only one he says will never leave him, as the Times reported in that somewhat odd passage. Those words sound less like an affirmation of a person and more like rank narcissism, where pathological needs for excess admiration are usually linked to low empathy, which could sound familiar. In that old myth, Narcissus was punished in a spell by the goddess of revenge for his, what we now call narcissism. But this ain't mythology. This is real life.
It's a real story because she is this person feeding him undigested garbage that he puts out on social media. She's the person who brought him the picture, allegedly, of the Obamas as apes. She's responsible for a lot of the garbage. And, you know, aides who have more experience, there aren't a lot of them. I mean, he doesn't have the finest cabinet, but, you know, there are other people who you can tell feel that they should be in more that position. And she's crafting Truth Social with him late at night. I mean, it's a real job. She makes $150,000 a year. She's 35. She's not a child. And, you know, all this insinuation, it's really his people who've made it, or who made, you know, Senator Ossoff's funny comments into something kind of dirty or perverse. But that's not what he said, and that's not what I think. I think she's the human binky, the human blanket. I think she's the nurse. She's not the mistress. However she feels, I don't know. It may be just affectionate for an older man. But I think he needs that kind of loyalty, and he also needs that kind of love, basically, sent back to him. And then, you know, constantly printing out. I mean, it's just so bizarre. Printing out Twitter posts, etc. You know, it's just like she has a lot of control over his mind space, such as it is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you hear when we talk about IRL in real life.
Yeah, IRL.
This is someone who lives, a lot of his mental focus is online and on the vanity projects, according to the New York Times.
Sure.
While everyone else has to suffer, as I put it, with the IRL punishment, unlike the Greek myth. She spoke at the 2020 Republican convention. Let's take a look.
You see, Mr. President, you've done so much more than your promises made and promises kept. For numbers only tell part of the story. We are the rest of it. Facts with faces of Americans who would still be forgotten if you and our favorite First Lady hadn't given up your own wonderful life so we could have the chance at one.
That's sort of the talking points. There's an almost sort of messianic quality to the way she casts him.
Right.
And again, staying on the substance, that's not how the public feels. This is the highest disapproval he's ever had.
Right, and it keeps climbing.
Based on what people feel is that their lives are harder. Right. And that he lied, and that he doesn't even try. I mean, we're in the media. We know how it works. You want to show that you care about high prices. One of the things you do is you hold a high prices related event every Monday.
Right.
In different parts of the country. And it's your way of saying, hey, I'm flying out to here to show you I care, even if you don't move the prices.
Right.
They don't even do that. No. And I know you wanted to talk about what David Axelrod argued, which is he said, basically, this Ossoff comment could have been done better. The two words with Natalie seemed unnecessary. They distracted from the power of the message.
Jon Ossoff drove the news cycle, not only with those two words, but they contributed to it. Jon Ossoff is emerging as the single best critic of Donald Trump in every way.
This grass will look so beautiful. If you remember, it had big sunken areas in here, and it was pretty bad. It was in bad shape. But this grass was the highest quality. It was given free of charge by Scott's Miracle-Gro, Scott's. And Scott's is a great company. They actually contributed to my campaign. I must be honest. You'll figure that one out. And they said to me, sir, we'd like to replace the grass at the White House with the highest quality grass and do a real job. So Scott's, I want to thank Scott's Miracle-Gro. It's I think the biggest grass company in the world.
You cannot make it up. We are now either all living in the Truman Show or let's make a deal. I mean, this is crazy, Charlie Sykes. And I guess what is amazing to me And if we're in the Truman Show, I don't know if Trump is Jim Carrey or isn't it Ed Harris, who's like the master of the scam. But the idea that this is where we are, where Trump's like, yeah, let me just plug my grass guy. He's a donor. I mean, what on earth are we watching?
We're watching the most corrupt administration in history, who's turned the White House into a vending machine. But I mean, as I was listening to that clip, I'm thinking this is the kind of thing you'd see on late night television, right? Somebody making a pitch, some has-been politician or celebrity who is selling something. And I think again, this is now breaking through to people who are going, not only is this is a man who said that I will be the voice of the forgotten American, and the forgotten American is thinking, wow, I'm not in this picture. I'm not showing up on, the White House South Lawn that you have just crapified in this particular way. And again, we keep coming back to this because I was listening to your episode before where you quoted that New York Times article describing Natalie Harp as the platinum blonde geyser of positivity. Donald Trump is living in an alternative reality. This is the world that he is living in, and I think that at one time he had a sense, that reptilian sense for how things looked and what public opinion was, and that's gone. And that clip that you just played is a perfect example. And of course, all of these projects have become just the epicenter of his graft and his self-dealing, as you've been discussing. And the problem is for Donald Trump is everybody sees it, everybody is watching. Just a few days before the midterm elections.
Jim, what is the sort of methodical way to tell this story to the American people? There's so much of it. It's all that he says and does. But how do you connect it to people's economic realities and let his words speak for themselves?
I mean, you just have to let people continue to see what this is. They see it every day at the gas pump, right? We're over $4 a gallon. They see it every day when they go to the grocery store. They see it when they drive around. They just Democrats need to be very specific about this and not get into these esoteric fights about policy. This is people paying $1,500 to $2,000 more this year because Donald Trump decided to start a trade war. This is people paying $4 a gas because Donald Trump started a war in Iran and now can't get out of it. People are paying for this all the time. The weird thing about today is he says in the Canadian deal, we have a deal with the Canadians, his exact words, we're going to pay a lot more. And then he walks out and sells some grass on in the White House. Like, what are we doing? This is unlike anything I've ever seen. And again, for those of us who are political professionals, you just can't imagine how they think this is a good thing to do, to Charlie's point, right before a midterm elections.
Well, the thing is, the ones who know better are gone, and the ones who are left either don't know better or don't care, or they got a piece of the grass. I mean, like the grass was donated, but somebody got something from the grass guy. It's extraordinary. Charlie, what are your thoughts about, Ossoff is obviously in the news because he tied the corruption and the lack of focus on people's problems to a line that's all over the news. I mean, Natalie Harp is one of the 3 aides who sneaks in the catering truck with Trump when he lies to the press and leaves Rubio on the decoy plane. The White House lost their mind. What do you think that's about?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you brought up Jon Ossoff, because that's one of the answers to your question. How do you connect the dots? Because all of the attention has been to that one line that Ossoff had. But if you look at the tape or you read the transcript, he immediately then pivots to, let's talk about how Donald Trump, is using the presidency, is exploiting the presidency to enrich himself. And he walks through the self-dealing, the declaration of the tariffs, and then how he goes out and buys lots of stock, bleats out that this is a great time to buy, and then eliminates the tariffs, which causes the markets to skyrocket. So Ossoff has gotten a lot of attention for the one rather modest line about Natalie, but he is also prosecuting the case that this is a corrupt president, and he's explaining it in very clear terms how the corruption works. That would be a model, I would think, for Democrats all around the country.
Joining us, author of the Cross Section newsletter on Substack, Paul Waldman, professor of public policy and economics at the University of Michigan, Betsy Stevenson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, Rick Wilson, still with us, and MS Now senior White House reporter, Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, how's the grass out there?
The grass right over here looks pretty good on the north lawn. On the south lawn, Katie, there's not much of it left. I was in the White House briefing room and I overheard one journalist ask the question, what's going to happen to the Easter egg roll this upcoming spring? Because most of the grass is gone because the president, he cleared out the area, right, to put this helipad, which one could make the case the helipad was needed, maybe. But then he actually had it removed because he said that it was sloping. They put the new helipad down, and that's what he was showing the cameras there. And he made it clear that it could withstand any strike, suggesting if there was a bomb or something that it would be able to keep it from being destroyed. So the president's saying that it is going to be there on the South Lawn beyond all of our times on this planet, Katie.
So I asked this next question seriously and without snark, even though it might sound a bit snarky. Does Donald Trump know how bad his numbers are? Does he know how angry people are? Or, Vaughn, is Natalie shielding him from it?
It's a very good question, Katie, and this is part of the more insulated second Trump administration that we are watching. And for the President of the United States, I believe that it's more, based off of conversations, an instance in which he believes that part of his legacy is the physical structure around the White House and beyond, and that these are means that he is going to take. There is sort of this disconnect from reality that Americans, as you just heard, they're watching him focus on these construction projects that are costing in the hundreds of millions of dollars at the same time that their loved ones are in theater in the Middle East, that they are struggling to pay grocery prices, and yet he isn't changing course. And that is why, frankly, it was not anticipated that he was going to go and show off his helipad. And when they announced that the cameras should come to the doors so that the president could lead them on the tour, it led to a lot of everybody kind of looking around, because that's where the president's focus is uniquely on a day like today. And so whether he is wholly aware, he's dismissive of his approval ratings and places blame so often on others, as we've heard him say, right? He said that if Republicans lose the midterm elections for Senate and the House, it's not because of him, but it's because of them.
Let me play a little bit more from Donald Trump on his ballroom helipad construction project tour.
They can have events on it. They can have people go there for cocktails and then walk to the ballroom after that's finished. We can have really incredible. This is unbelievable for state. Without even having to go into the White House, they get out of the car on the beautiful new roadway. They get out of the car and they walk down this path onto that, and they can have cocktails and everything outside of the White House, and then they go into the ballroom. Even the military, they can use it like that. And we have the ballroom is so much a military component with the drones and the bomb shelters and everything else that we have in there. So it's really, that started off as a ballroom. And before we started work, the military came to see me and they say, sir, we have an opportunity to do something incredible here. And we've been trying to do it for 100 years, but we've never had an opportunity like that. So I had to make that decision. And I said, look, go ahead, design what you want. And that goes down 5 stories. It goes down almost 65 feet.
What's in those 5?
Well, I'm not allowed to discuss that, but a lot of very detailed stuff.
Cocktails and bomb shelters. I mean, honestly, Rick Wilson, what the heck is going on?
Look, Donald Trump is a guy who is disconnected somewhat from reality. He's disassociated from the real job of president, and he thinks he is either an infomercial or a reality TV show host again. And he wants people to see the ballroom and the gold leaf on everything and the weird Liberace meets Saddam decorating style in the Oval Office. That's what interests him now, and that and money, of course, which is why the crypto bros are all there today. Really, he's disconnected from the political impact of it. He really doesn't care. I mean, for my as a former Republican, I say this to the guys who stayed in the party. He doesn't care about you. He's never been a Republican. And his very Versailles sort of approach to an election where people are screaming about their economic fears is really dragging down He doesn't have to run again. The rest of these guys are taking all the radiation off of this behavior right now.
I mean, Paul, these numbers, the polling numbers, both from The Economist and from Reuters, they're real bad, really bad. How do they get this low without intervention from the White House, without, a change of approach, strategy from the president himself?
Well, I think the problem really is him. He ran saying, I'm going to bring down all your prices on day one. And of course, that hasn't happened. And, I think a lot of what's going on now, we see him focusing so much on things like the ballroom and the lawn. A lot of that is about his desire for a sense of control. The economy is an enormous and unruly entity. There's no button that Donald Trump can push that says bring grocery prices down or increase jobs. It's very complicated. And he can, on the other hand, say, give me a new helipad, and then it will happen. That I think gives him that sense that he is potent and he has that sense of control. But it's really difficult for him to do big things on the economy. And the things that he has done that have been pretty big haven't worked out well at all. And in fact, especially when you think about the Iran war, have really done damage to the economy. And so now there really isn't all that much that he could do to suddenly turn around America's economic fortunes. And I think at some level he knows that. And so he believes that if he talks about the things that he is interested in, that he cares about, then that will somehow, kind of divert everyone's attention, or at least make them think that he is still strong and forceful and effective. But even if he wanted to, even if he sat down with his closest economic advisors and said, tell me how we can bring inflation down to 2% by November, there wouldn't be much they could tell him to make that happen. Maybe Betsy could speak to that more than I could, but there's not that much that he can do at this point. And so he's focused on the things that he really cares most about, which is all this aesthetic stuff and whether or not the lawn is greener than any lawn that's ever existed before.
Betsy, answer Paul's question.
So there's definitely a legitimate point there that trying to bring inflation down between now and November is going to be really, really tough. Are there things that he could do, like getting rid of all of the tariffs, ending the war, trying to bring some stability in? Yes. But I think that kind of the point is the ship has sailed for some of that, certainly in terms of getting it done by November. But I think even more importantly, it goes against what he thought he was going to do. I do think he had a vision that he was going to come in and reshape the U.S. economy in a particular way, and he just hasn't really been able to do it, right? He's come in and he got Elon Musk to help him fire a bunch of government workers, but it turns out actually those government workers did some useful things, boring things to the president, but boring things are actually the stuff that make the U.S. The economy and the government services work well for people. So then we've got, we've got food safety issues. We've got all sorts of issues arising. So that didn't, that didn't do miracles the way he thought it was going to. He tried to do tariffs, and that actually caused a lot of inflation, and it also caused big legal battles, and he's been back and forth. And, we're already seeing GM announce this week they were doing some layoffs. So it didn't give him the manufacturing boost he was hoping for. So he's either going to walk back everything he believed in, or he's got to stick his fingers in his ears and say, la, 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 I'm building a ballroom. And I think what we're seeing is he's doing the latter.
Yeah, but I think there's a third option. And I think that third option would be to at least appear like he's focused on trying to turn it around. You can't turn it around between now and November, but you can go out there and tell the American people that they're not crazy, that it has been hard, and that there are, new policies he's putting in place or things that he's working on to make it better, to meet them where they are and to acknowledge their fears. He's not doing any of that, which leads me, Rick, to the perpetual question I have. You brought up Republicans a moment ago who are still on his side. These numbers are so bad. The midterms look like they could be so bad for Republicans. We just, we saw some numbers out of Ohio. You have Sherrod Brown leading by 8 points. They're clearly worried about Iowa, sending all of these administration officials up to try and boost the Republican candidates out there. Right. Governor Abbott is neck and neck in a statistical tie with Gina Hinojosa in Texas. Ossoff appears to be running away with it in Georgia. There's all of this data out there that is telling Republicans Donald Trump is dragging them down. We are away from the primaries now. Why have they not made a break from him? Why are they still lashing themselves so tightly to him?
I think I saw an interesting sign last night when Byron Donalds gave his victory speech in Florida for the Republican governor's nomination. He didn't mention Donald Trump one time. He didn't thank Donald Trump. He didn't come out and praise Donald Trump. He didn't say, I thank you, Mr. President, for your total and complete endorsement. He left Donald Trump on the table. Donald Trump is a has-been now to Byron Donalds and to some other Republicans who are figuring it out. It is going to take longer for some who are in deeper red states who believe still that their love of Trump has to be manifested every day to make sure Republican turnout stays up. But, when you saw, it was a real tell to me last night that I think it's starting to seek through who bragged about Trump every 5 minutes. And now he's like, Trump's 15th ex-girlfriend on the, leaving him on the corner somewhere. He really, last night I was shocked that he didn't thank Trump. And I think you're going to see that with more of these guys who a little vestigial survival instinct starts to kick in when they realize Trump isn't popular with Democrats, obviously. He's not popular with independents. He's losing on every key issue that they thought they were going to campaign on. And so it really is a sort of a big tell right now that a lot of them are still too slow to figure it out. But a few of them are starting to put their heads up and say, uh-oh. This I got to get the stink of this guy off of me as soon as I can.
Exciting news, everyone. Just when you were looking for a brand new show to binge during the hot days of August, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's reality show is finally out. Now, you may remember back in May, and we talked about this at the time, Duffy and his wife, Fox News anchor Rachel Campos Duffy, announced the show with great fanfare on Fox News. The premise of the show was that the Duffys, along with their 9 children, took a massive road trip all across the country, supposedly to encourage Americans to take road trips of their own.
You could go for 2 hours. You could drive for 2 days. You could do a day trip. It fits any budget to do a road trip.
Does it now? Needless to say, the reality show got a lot of backlash. A lot of Americans were actually pretty mad about the price of gas and about the Trump administration's role in making road trips a whole lot less affordable. There's also the issue of how a cabinet secretary found the time to film an entire reality show. And yes, we're showing you clips of it as we talk about it here, just to give you a sense. I mean, do you remember how mad Sean Duffy was at Biden's transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, for taking a singular vacation and going on paternity leave when his twins were born?
What's striking is how often this happens. There's a crisis, and Pete Buttigieg decides to ignore it. Mayor Pete went on vacation in Portugal just a couple weeks ago as rail workers prepared to strike. He was on paternity leave, as dozens of container ships couldn't enter the country a year ago.
Now remind me, when Pete Buttigieg was transportation secretary, did we have the longest TSA shutdown in American history with the longest TSA wait times in American history? Nope, we did not. That 75-day shutdown was while Sean Duffy was the transportation secretary. And while Duffy claims he only took a few days here or there over the course of 7 months to film this series, some of those days were notably during that shutdown. Now, in response to the backlash he got about this show, Duffy called his critics anti-road trip, saying that, quote, the radical, miserable left hated the show because, quote, it's too wholesome, it's too patriotic, and too joyful. I hate to break it to you, Mr. Secretary, but the problem here wasn't too much joy. I mean, beyond the rising cost of gas and the time Duffy took to film the series, the big problem with Sean Duffy's reality show is who paid for it. The series shows Sean Duffy's 11-person family not just road tripping around the country, not just driving nice cars and staying in nice hotels and eating out constantly, but doing lots of fun, expensive-looking things like snowmobiling and going down the water slide on a docked cruise ship, which I should note is not something one typically does on an affordable road trip or a road trip of any kind. So who paid for it all? In response to the backlash about the finances of the project, Duffy declared that not a taxpayer dime was spent on any of it, and that no one in his family was paid for their participation in the show. The Department of Transportation told MS Now that career ethics officials reviewed and approved Duffy's participation in and travel for the series. The department also told MS Now that all production costs for this trip were paid for by a nonprofit called the Great American Road Trip, which just so happens to be sponsored by a bunch of companies in the transportation industry. Companies, I will note, that Sean Duffy, as the transportation secretary, has a whole lot of power over. The Wall Street Journal reports that companies like Boeing and Toyota donated $1 million each. And when you watch the show, that is pretty obvious. Almost every car the Duffy family drives is a Toyota, and the Toyota logo is often prominently displayed in the shot. The Duffy family also takes a tour of a Boeing cargo plane at a Boeing plant in South Carolina, which, like going down the water slide on a dock cruise ship, is not what one typically does on a road trip.
What's up, Team Boeing?
Hey, welcome.
How are you guys doing? Good to see you, Jeff.
We're doing great. Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's impressive. I've seen the little airplanes, little baby ones, and now this is the big airplanes.
This is the big leagues here.
The Dream Lifter is the modified 747 that we built for this program.
So the Dream Lifter actually moves the pieces. This is a massive airplane that's the workhorse of making the South Carolina plant work.
So you're going up in one of the biggest airplanes in the world. Wow.
Wow, indeed. Oh, and that cruise ship I mentioned, it was a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, which, of course, is another one of the sponsors that funded this show's nonprofit, of course. So is Google, whose parent company owns the autonomous vehicle company Waymo. So, of course, here we go.
We're going to go to a company called Waymo.
So I'm going to bring the kids to see one of the most advanced autonomous vehicles that we have in America. This is the future of transportation.
We are in a Waymo. It's driving, and here's your kids. They're pretty thrilled.
It's kind of creepy, but it's cool.
Do you feel scared, guys?
No.
It actually drives very, very well.
Priceless bit of advertising there, isn't it, for Waymo? Now, back in May, Politico obtained the pitch deck sent to sponsors of this trip outlining exactly what sponsors would get for different amounts of money. $500,000 gets you some stuff, but $1 million got you more. I mean, you see the problem here, right? The transportation secretary and his family get a big, expensive vacation that most Americans can't afford for free, funded by a nonprofit that is funded by transportation companies that he regulates. That is a gift. The Transportation Department says that ethics officials approved the gift of this trip from the nonprofit that made the series. The nonprofit says that it operates independently and is in compliance with all applicable laws and disclosure requirements. It says that its sponsors would never expect anything in return for their donations. We've reached out to sponsors like Toyota and Boeing and Waymo and Royal Caribbean. We have not heard back. As a law professor who specializes in government ethics put it to the New York Times, though, this is really gift laundering. This is an incredibly corrupt endeavor, and it's dangerous because it affects public safety. And that's because as Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy is supposed to be regulating businesses like Toyota and Boeing without fear or favor. We also reached out to the Secretary's office and asked a series of pretty straightforward questions, you can see them on your screen, about whether his agency is overseeing business with the companies that sponsored his show. Again, we're showing you those questions on the screen. Now, a spokesperson for his office declined to answer really any of those questions, instead just saying that, quote, career ethics officials reviewed every aspect of this partnership and cleared both the secretary's participation, and that regulatory decisions at DOT are guided by career safety professionals, the law, and the facts. His spokesperson also decided that instead of answering the pretty straightforward questions we asked, he would just attack me personally, which is obviously something one does when their boss has nothing to hide. Stay classy, Nate. From DOT, I'm watching you. We also invited Secretary Duffy on this show tonight so he could answer our questions himself. We've not heard back. Of course we haven't, and we'll be right back.